Welcome back. We'd love to, just on the break just then, Claire just shared what she was seeing. We'd love to hear what other people are seeing. Whether this makes sense for people. Whether they get a sense of something.
Could I share?
Claire! Yeah.
I'm going to be brave. It was something you said about the light, about your mate, and about that hook. And I just realised with myself and Paul that, what have I realised? It's bloody gone. The hook that I have with him, and because I look for, oh, sorry, Paul, actually, I shouldn't have been. I'm sure he won't mind me speaking. Like my addiction to someone else's behaviour, and if there's a faint hint of, I've seen this before, I know what's going on, how I go to my thing, whatever that is, and numb out, or just not want the experience. And I think there are just so many different ways to be addicted, and habits of sort of acting out habits, but habits of thinking, and like what you've been saying, just how we make everything up. So we almost don't know whether something's true or not, but and it's just that protection, isn't it? Like just protecting yourself. I've seen this before, I know what's happening. And even it gets to the point with me where I almost get scared and back off. And I know Paul won't, it is about Paul, so there's no point in, he won't mind me saying, but like when he's on a bit of a high, like this morning, I heard him and he's really positive. That's almost like I've seen this before too. And oh God, where's this gonna go? This is gonna go one way. And me just making up this whole scenario around something that's really bloody great. And it makes me also think that for me personally, to stop looking for positive, everything's going well, like to just get more of a balance, like and like I said to Paul, he said he's feeling really good. And I thought to myself, that's brilliant. And it's all right if you're feeling really shit. I don't think I said that to him. I think I just thought that in my head. And it's me remembering that when I feel really, really good, like I've had situations where I've done things or said things or had behaviours where I've been in a really good place and I've thought something was a really good idea. And then once I've actually come down a bit, I thought, oh shit, what have I done? So it's not just the low places that I've done, like, oh shit, what's happening here? I can also do that when I'm way up here as well. So it's having a bit of a neutrality, but not a boringness. I think that's all I want to share. If you understood any of that.
I think what I understand is when people start to experience quiet, their ego starts to reveal itself. And that's a really useful thing. It can be a deeply, deeply uncomfortable thing. I know mystics have called it the dark night of the soul, when they start to become aware of the ego that they've lived in. as they take the steps and they start to see the ego that they've lived out of, and it starts to break down, and they almost, as one person once said, see how separate they'd made themselves from God, from how they'd identified so much with thoughts and feelings, and thought that each wave was real and true and fixed, only for it to be questioned. And the moment it questions, the crest of the wave drops and it disappears back into where it came from. I love that, Claire, because that's what people often find. It's like you start to become aware of the ego that you live out of. Until it reveals itself as for what it is, there's nothing you can do about it. You will just stay plumbed into that way of thinking, that programming of thought. But
it's almost invisible, isn't it?
Yeah,
like,
it's completely invisible.
I'm seeing this other person and I know what this means. It doesn't seem like something created in your mind. It seems like you're seeing reality. And it sounds like you've kind of had a moment where you checked yourself. Like your sister always says, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
I think it's a rap, isn't it?
It's from a song.
Yeah.
And it seems like you checked yourself in that moment, like, oh, hang on a minute, I've kind of got a finger pointing outwards. And then when we look inside and see where we're coming from, we learn. So it just sounds like, and I loved what you said,
Beautiful.
However nice it is sitting and listening to people, you've realized actually I need to allow time for myself and my own stillness, and allowing yourself to go to those depths of stillness where you answer all your own questions. Like when we were working in South Africa with these kids, they went, oh, this man, Sydney Banks, how did he know that if he wasn't educated? How could he change psychology? How could he if he
hadn't read all these books?
And I just looked at them and I just said, well, how do you think information got into books? And you could just see them all like, what? And you're like, I bet they're thinking Google.
The first thing they thought was internet.
But you see how, anything that we've learned has come from original thought. And we're all tapped into that same intelligent source. So it may be that you have an insight while listening to a talk, but not everyone else had that insight while listening to that talk. So the evidence for the fact it comes from within is everywhere. And I think it's a really beautiful thing to see. I want a bit more time just being quiet with myself. Because it can be so easy to think somebody else has got the answer.
Some wisdom that comes through. Paul, I'm sure you won't mind us sharing this. But yesterday when we had a conversation, you're like, I really felt the urge to go for a run. But then I thought, I'm just running away from my problems. Problems are thoughts. They're nothing more, nothing less. And we were saying to Paul yesterday, look, your common sense is saying, go for a run, Paul. You feel better. And Paul, at that time, you were going, nah, I've got to sit this out. I've got to stay in this shithole right here.
Paul, are you skiving?
Yep.
Go, lad.
I'm sat in a pub that I'm supposed to be doing some work in. Yeah, getting paid for sitting watching this, joining this retreat.
Go, lad. Go, lad. That's encouraged.
The perks of being self-employed and devious.
It's all right, mate. Just hope your mate doesn't become interested in the principles.
He's done a psychology degree, so he's all about doctors and
Fine.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's like getting to trust ourselves as well. It's like sometimes we can tend to find people, I know this is a thought, so I'm going to wait for it to pass before I do anything. Or they hear the statement, there's nothing to do in the principles. So they falsely make the assumption that there's nothing to do is saying do nothing. It's not saying do nothing. This isn't passive. This is about realizing what life is made of, how life works, seeing what life truly is. It's an illusion of mind. It's an illusion of spirit. All the same spirit, no matter what expression. Doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. We're all the same thing. It's about waking up to that fact, seeing it's all a dance, it's all a play. There's nothing ultimately to be afraid of, ever in life. Nothing. Not death, nothing. And then going and playing. I remember one of my favourite things, Jesus quotes, JC, me and JC. It's like, he said, somebody asked him, how do you best serve God? Do we give alms, money to the church? How do we do it? Do we pray? How do we best serve God? Jesus, being a man who was constantly saying, the kingdom of God is within you and outside of you. You are all things are God. You are that. He said the best way you can serve God is to just do what you love. That's what he said. That was his advice. How do you best serve God? You do what you love. You do what you enjoy. As you bring, like Sid Banks said, if I'm as much used to the world tending to my garden as I am giving a talk to 100 people. One person in a good space illuminates many others, touches many others on a level not visible to the physical, to the eyes, to the senses, to the reality that we perceive all around us. Looks fixed and real, does the reality we perceive all around us? It's not. It's made of energy. It's vibrations of energy. We are vibrations of energy. Our mind is vibrating energy. Everything is an illusion of energy. The whole game, the whole universe. We think it's all fixed and real. We think all our problems are something more than a vibration of energy. It really isn't. Do we see that all the time? No. We get to play in life. We get to create worlds. We get to wake up, like Claire, in a moment, you get to wake up and connect to yourself, your true self, where suddenly the observational part of you just becomes so prominent and you start to see the waves that we've been thinking were us and real and fixed. Concrete, perhaps frozen ocean. Only to see it thaw in front of our eyes and become visible for what it is. Oh shit, I've been living out of that belief. As Jesus said, it's done unto you as you believe. All through the Bible, 3 or 4 times in the Bible that's stated. It's done unto you as you believe. It's trying to tell us something so important. People, it's done unto you as you believe. Your reality will be whatever you believe it to be, will be your reality. However you believe, whatever you adopt as a belief, as an identity of yourself and other people and the world and how things work, that's how the world will appear to you, because it's a state of consciousness. It's the Holy Spirit.
Anybody else have anything to say?
See, yesterday when Bill was talking, that was the first thing that I heard was his talk when he was talking about the guy in the psychiatric unit. It's the first thing that I ever heard. Is Dave Hill sent me the link to the talk, and the minute I heard that, I felt like I could just turn the thing off, and it was quite scary, quite annoying as well, quite frustrating. The fact that the realization is that I was doing it to myself. I was keeping myself in a state of depression, and any time that I felt happy, I would suppress that because I didn't feel comfortable. I only felt comfortable when I was miserable. Less and less more now, starting to embrace being happy, smile now and again, but it's that realization where it's like you say, fuck, it is that simple. It's just It's always been there. You don't need anything external. You know, it's just that maybe somebody just says something and it just flicks that light, but it's always been there. And that, I'm saying it's frustrating. It's frustrating because you're like, fuck, if only I'd known this when I was younger, or, you know, but it's just like we always say, it's if you'd have known what you know now back then you wouldn't be the same person as you are now. So it's all lessons. But that to me is and I could see him getting upset when he started to talk about it, you know, and it's phenomenal. And like the first thing when you go to the doctor, they throw drugs at you, and it's like, don't need these. All they do is give you other side effects. So I mean, yeah, I mean that's such a profound thing, and I still get angry. I still shout. I shout myself. Get angry, self-harm now and again. But you catch yourself, and you realise you're doing it again. You know, so that and then you can give yourself a break and stop being hard on yourself and realise it's just thoughts that are taking you there. You know, but yeah, that was a big thing for me. That when I first heard that, and when I heard him actually say it yesterday, I wanted to sort of jump in and say something, but I just think my bottle crashed by the end. I don't know. But yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad I asked him to talk about Nicole, because it then made him think to tell that story. And I think there's quite a few comments afterwards about how powerful that story is. And I think that's why I love to listen to Bill's stories, because he has story after story of people who you'd think they've almost been written off as they're always going to be in this institution, but then they something wakes up in them.
Yeah, it's almost like the reverse of the film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where the big Indian guy is just there because he wants to be there, whereas Jack Nicholson wants to be there because he thinks it's going to be an easy ride, and he ends up losing the plot, you know. But yeah, it's strange how people try and tell us these things in different forms, you know. Obviously the movie director was trying to tell that story and get it out there, and you mentioned the Bible and the religion, and I mean, even you were talking yesterday about blossoms. It's a massive thing in Japan, isn't it? Blossom. Is it Shinto Buddhism? Shut up. Yeah. Where they celebrate how delicate life is and how beautiful it is in the moment, but then it dies away but comes back again, you know. So it's always, it's still there. So but we can't stop talking about it. It's weird, isn't it? It's like you sort of get it, and then you're like, well, need to keep talking about it though.
Because we know there's no end.
Yeah.
Deep down, we know.
Well, I know that when I first came across this, I had such a huge shift, but there's also a group in the town that I lived near that met every single week. It was called the Blue Bloom Foundation then, and all inspired by Dr. Roger Mills's work and Margaret's work. And I was so grateful just to keep having the reminder. And then like on a Sunday, we'd get together and have like a potluck where people would just bring food and we'd all just talk about what we'd been seeing. And then sometimes on a Wednesday night, we'd hire a room and try and give talks and take it in turns. Like someone would take thought as a principle, or someone would take mind as a principle. And we were all just like scrabbling around in the dark, really, because we didn't really know what it was we were trying to share, but we just knew there was something in it and we wanted to give to others. But I'm so grateful to have had the constant reminders, because I think if I'd had that kind of experience and then just gone back into a world where no one else was talking about this, I probably could have quite easily got lost in the illusion again.
Well, we do anyway, don't we?
No, but just completely lost and think, oh, it was a fluke, it was a load of rubbish. But each week you go back and you're like, oh, I've done it again. And I think that's the nice thing about these kind of groups. I often think, oh, we've told that story a million times, or, you know, we've used that metaphor, but every time I hear this metaphor, I hear something new in it.
Yeah.
And I've heard Dave talk about the lake countless times. That's Rusty falling off the chair again.
His chair again.
Come on.
Keep going.
Come on. He's not going to come up. up now. Come on, Sunny, up.
Hello, lad.
Oh,
Hello, friend.
Take a bow up. See?
That's how we met Sylvie. We
oh.
met because of
Shy
dogs.
now, yeah.
Dave always is your dog sad. If
Dog
there's a
sad.
dog, Dave has to go over and touch it. It's like ask people first.
Okay, has to go touch it. I love it.
Can
Yeah,
I
you're
share
not-
something?
Yes,
Oh.
please.
Eh? He's not normally shy. Must be a ginger thing, eh?
Hey, we're
Okay,
not
we're
all
having a dog
shy.
moment. Look at this.
All gingers aren't shy. I'm not shy anymore. I used to be.
Dogs moments.
Lovely.
No, I'm
This
actually
is
had to
cranky,
talk because
cranky.
I didn't want to take the picture away from that adorable dog.
This one's a different breed. This one thinks it's a cat.
I was just thinking, how these retreats always amaze me because the beauty of the stories and then the beauty of the stillness, like the allness of it. That creative space that makes up everything from like the funniest stories to like the saddest stories, whatever, but it's just momentary creation. But we can enjoy it. I enjoy it so much. And then the stillness. And Bill Pettit said something yesterday about, was it like God's like shouting joy at us or something? Like the words he used were so great. That in that stillness, there's that creative energy, that something from nothing is so beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. I've just been loving hearing from everybody so much. And also just really loving what Claire said, about the quiet and that space. There's and the humor of it all, like I think one thing that's hit so much this year for me is like that creative space, how it can make anything, and life and death. And I got really into listening to people with near-death experiences and in a beautiful way. Like I tell people I'm kind of excited for when I die. Like I'm kind of psyched. Not like I'm wanting to happen today, but like I just think it's going to be such a cool experience. And after one of them, I asked for a sign. I'd never done that. But I was in this space of like, this stuff is so cool. Let me ask for a sign. And I went into my kitchen and I made dinner and I sat down and my vacuum cleaner started going on and off. And that's like one of the classic things, like light bulbs going on and off or vacuums going on. And I was like, whoa, it's happening. And I thought that was it. And then I went to sleep and I woke up in the morning, and I wish I could show you this, but I don't want to take the time. I woke up in the morning and I walked out to my living room, and I looked through the window. And before my dad died about, I don't know, 18 years ago or something, I had done a project for him, this hotel, and it was his life's dream to get this place like turned around. And it was a project that I did with him, that I shared with him, that was like one of the best things in my life. It was so amazing. Anyway, I look out the window after 17 years. It was a hotel, and I had these beautiful signs made for the hotel by a local craftsperson, sign maker. And I look out the window and the sign from that inn is sitting on my front stoop facing me, like somebody had placed it like perfectly so I would see it through the window. And I just cracked up. Like I just was like,
give me a sign.
Give me a sign, And there I get a sign, like in wood, and so anyway, there's such magic to life. There's such mystery, and and it comes through in so many ways. I'm just really grateful that I'm enjoying that with all of you.
Love that. Love that. This is it, you know, what we're talking about isn't it's just open, it's just a conversation about seeing what separates us from the mystery, because it will always be a mystery.
Something that Sharon said reminded me of the last time I saw Roger Mills was I think about 3 or 4 months before he passed away, and we got to do one of the last interviews with him. I think it was his last interview, and it was so interesting because he'd lost a huge amount of weight and was quite weak, and you could see where he'd had cannulas and things in his hand. And when he started talking about the principles and life and death, you could just see like this, he was so still and so peaceful. And then there's one line he said where he said, he looked to it's interesting, you can see in the interview, he looks to the right, and that's where his wife and daughter were sitting. And then he kind of looks back at the camera and he said, I'm looking forward to the next evolution of my consciousness. And I think he was aware that for his family, that was really hard to hear, because they wanted him to fight and stay. But I kind of got a sense that he knew that this life, this form wasn't it, and that there was more, and he was looking forward to that. And he seemed very, very, very peaceful. And I think that like Sharon, we've been really interested in listening to different talks on near-death experiences and past life, reincarnation, all that kind of just. And I know that when I first learned about the principles, I kind of closed my ears to everything else, because I was like, as if it was the answer, or somehow, I don't know, other things weren't it. And I realized like the principles is like a foundation or a beginning to just open you up to the recognition of the mystery and the magic and
the
unknown.
Of it all, yeah. Because it's all the things that we think are true that are getting in the way. It's all the things that we think are true, we know are true, should I say, is that creates our suffering. And when you find yourself in that mysterious place, just opens you up. It's interesting, the only thing that does create the separation, or the impression of a separation, is just all our beliefs. And as Bill read yesterday from one of Sid's talks, the allness is nothing. Everything comes from nothing. You can't get your head around it. Life's a mystery. Always has been, always will be. We are a mystery. And knowledge is the collapsing of infinity into a potential. And then we mistakenly think that potential is the infinity.
Do the rainbow.
Choose to the rainbow. Yeah, just got another little diagram, because we are aware, like Sylvie said, you know, people learn in different ways. Some people like to listen, some people like to see, and so we'll just chuck in a couple of diagrams, just ones that we found useful, just ones that have come to us over the time of working with people. This one we call the rainbow.
You've got an artist on. You can't.
Who is the? Oh shit! Yeah. Sylvie, send us a picture of a rainbow dude. No, look at that. It's not got a skull on it. I'm not really. Put a skull in there.
Do that if you want, yeah.
No, we've
yeah.
seen your one of Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, that's nice.
I called it I Can Hear Jimmy. Not enough of men, was it white men can't jump? When they're having an argument whether you can hear Jimmy if you're white. And so, yeah, that was, as I went through a few phases, that painting started off looking a bit like Denzel. They all start looking like Denzel Washington for some reason. I've done Muhammad Ali, he started looking like Denzel. It's weird. And then
Everybody wants to be Denzel Washington.
that's setting up. But yeah. I quite like that one. Surprised about Dave buying it though. I didn't have him down as a Hendrix fan.
No,
Secret.
he's not on, is he?
I don't think so. No, he's
Can't defend himself.
Yeah, can say what we want then.
It's great hearing a Scottish fella say Jimmy. Yeah, this is a diagram that came to us one time when we were talking. Again, it's to try and reinforce or cement the realization that all things truly are one. And it was one. Is there anybody here who doesn't like rainbows, just out of interest? Just raise a hand if you've ever pointed one out. Jane, you put your hand up first. Why do you point out rainbows?
To me, rainbows are a sign. A sign, just a good sign. It makes my heart just glow when I see a rainbow. As a family, we just love rainbows. Well, my daughter and I probably most, because we're always going on about signs. Funny because we're talking about that. So to me, it's a sign of the heaven and earth. You know, it's the link between the two. Does that make sense? Whenever I see one, it does. I mean, you know, I just get all excited, and it's just the best thing to see in the sky.
If you see a spelling mistake, it's to make sure that everybody's awake.
I can't see very well.
Love rainbows and exciting.
Yeah.
It's your word.
I mean, it's funny because I'm sitting on my sofa now, and I've got these. You can see I've got roof lights.
Yeah.
Which is filthy, but anyway, that's by the by. And I was just looking up because it's a really weird day weather-wise to see if there is a rainbow before you mentioned it. Well, I must have seen that anyway. But you know, because.
Those are two awesome things. You love rainbows and they're exciting. Anybody else? Why do you like rainbows? Whoever put your hand up. Kelly, I think you put your hand up. Yeah. Oh, she just disappears.
I'm just so rubbish. Just push the wrong button every time. Why do I like rainbows? Well, they just make you aware of the kind of magic and in the world, in the kind of that you can look at a rainbow. It just speaks of something much bigger, something they're just huge.
Yeah.
So just to give you that feeling of like just being a little dot in something really big.
Have you ever seen a wrong rainbow?
No.
Is there a wrong color in the rainbow? Thanks, Kat. Well, here comes the science about Sylvie.
A little artist point of view.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you see a rainbow, it's a moment of seeing all color.
All beautiful. Right?
It's a moment of clarity, basically, because the colors you see are just the reflections of the pigment of the things that they're hitting. That's the sort of science part. But when you see the rainbow, it's you're seeing everything all in one go. And I think that's what makes you, that's what gives you that sort of giddy feeling. It's because you become connected. It's almost, well, it is the universe, but it's just a full spectrum of light, and that's what you're seeing all in one go. So, sorry.
Beautiful, dude. Yeah, love it. Love it, man. We know rainbows are a spectrum. They're a refraction of light through water, or light through a crystal, but for this example, light through water. And as we see that, it's like the eyes take in the light and the spectrum is experienced as a rainbow. And the thing about rainbows is they are an infinite thing. They, above a rainbow, you start going into infrared light. Now the eyes, our optical organs can't pick up infrared light, but we know that it exists above the rainbow because we've created machinery that can see it. So that allows us to see it. So we know that above the rainbow, it continues out of the spectrum of our experience beyond, and below it, it goes into ultraviolet light and beyond. We know that because we've created the technology, we have the technology to see them now, see this ultraviolet light. So the light gets split into all these different colors. And they are a beautiful thing. I've not come across a single person who's gone, no, I don't like rainbows. I love rainbows. They're exciting. They're magic. They are magic. Even as we describe this, light and water create a rainbow. There has to be the mystery behind it all. I said to a young lad, digressing a little bit the other day. I'm digressing a little bit, but the other day I said to a young lad, we're talking about something. It was started with a pen. What's that? It's a pen. Tell me about the pen. It's plastic. What's that? Well, it's made of oil. What's oil? Well, it's dead vegetable matter. Fossil vegetable matter. What's that? Well, it's plants that have existed years ago. What are plants? Well, they're life. What's life? Don't know. Whatever you look at, you ask enough questions, you will get back to the point where I do not know, and you realize I do not know is the basis of absolutely everything. Rainbows are a mystery. When you really break it down, what is light? I don't know. Well, it's light particles, it's photons. What's a photon? It's a particle. What's a particle? It's a thing. What's that? I don't know. You see, life is everything. You can look at anything, question yourself about it. You will end up at this space of I do not know. That is the truest state of all things. But for the sake of argument, light and water create rainbows. Beautiful. No wrong colors in a rainbow. We can have our preferences, what we prefer. No wrong colors. You never see a broken rainbow. You never look at it and go, fucking hell, that's a shit rainbow, isn't it? Don't know why I even bothered. Look at it. You never see a rainbow of just red. or just green. It's the full spectrum. Now, if we were to make a few adjustments to this, everybody see that? Consciousness, thought, love, fear. We've got a different spectrum. We've got an experiential spectrum, a reality spectrum, an experiential reality spectrum now, where, for argument's sake, love is at the top. It doesn't have to be.
Does, otherwise you get the diagram wrong.
The only reason why I put it at the top is because I once tried to put it at the bottom just to play devil's advocate, and I fucked the whole thing up because I couldn't get my head around it. And the experience of fear down the bottom. Sometimes we fall into spaces of love so beyond this normal experience of life. Every now and again we fall into these spaces of love, and I'm sure everybody on this screen at some point, even if they were a child, fell into these spaces of just, oh, love, for no good reason, just love. Paul's talked a bit about it today. Just feel full of love, feel full of love of life. And sometimes we drop into spaces of fear so beyond the everyday realms of what we perceive to be normal fear. We drop into serious spaces of depression or hurt, grief. Like, I hurt so much, I feels like I can't take anymore. Almost beyond belief, grief, beyond belief, pain. But the majority of the time we're in and out throughout here. Throughout the day, we find ourselves, perhaps we wake up here, find ourselves like this, ooh, in and out of all these different experiences throughout the day. Remember, no wrong color in a rainbow. There's an industry built on the idea that there is such a thing as a wrong color in a rainbow. And it says, if you experience between blue and green, you're ill. He calls it mental illness. If you feel these states of being somewhere between green, red, yellow, pink, good, good, yes, normal human being, functioning well human being, healthy human being. Green, well, might want to consider talking to somebody. Orange, let's have a look at some medication. Purple, let's get you some help. Blue, get you sectioned. It's like, for want of a better description, which probably really does want a better description. But there's a whole industry based on the idea that between green and blue is illness. Where if we feel a certain way, these are feelings. If we feel or think a certain way, there's something wrong with us. We are damaged, broken. Can't break a rainbow, you know. Can't even split a rainbow. And the other idea that somewhere between here is healthy. I was treated like that by psychiatry, psychology, and doctors. I didn't know any different. I went to speak to people because I started to feel orange, purple, blue, sometimes well and truly into the ultraviolet of scared, sadness, depression. And it was only when I woke up, I was told I had chemical imbalances within my brain and all these things, and I was given medicines for these chemical imbalances, told I'd have depression for the rest of my life. It's just who you are, Dave. It's just the way you're engineered. It's the way your brain works. It's malfunctioning. Your brain's malfunctioning. That's why you feel like you do. It's why you have depressions. You're creating all these chemicals. You're just an unfortunate being, Dave. One of the unfortunate ones. Many people are told this. But it's not true. And it's not logical either. When you really start to look at life, if we can start to become aware that consciousness, we are a consciousness state, we are consciousness, we do think, creates all of our realities. If somebody can start to wake up to this fact, what creates fear is the same thing that creates love, like the ocean. What creates the color red is the same thing that creates the color orange. It's light and water. It's consciousness and thought. You see, that this rainbow can't be split. It's non-dual. It's singular. It only has the appearance of separation throughout the spectrum. What creates fear is the same thing that creates love. They're both the same thing. They just appear different within our being. You know, a thought that creates excitement for one person can create utter terror for another.
Going down that road yesterday on the mountain bikes, Dave was just like, go for it. And I was like, be careful. And he sat and waited for me about 2 or 3 minutes at the bottom, because I've got a lot of thinking about going downhill on a mountain bike when it's really rocky and you've got no thinking about it and you just...
I have some thinking about it, just a little bit less. But all people experience all different parts of the spectrum throughout the day. And I really want people to really get a sense it's normal. You're allowed. This doesn't exist. Illness, psychological illness does not exist. The psyche cannot get ill. The psyche is consciousness. Consciousness cannot get ill. Thought cannot get ill. It cannot get ill. It doesn't exist within the realms of the physical, the physical can get in, the body can get ill. But the mind cannot get ill. The mind can think, and it can create experiences that appear to create illness. But these are just expressions of thought. These are thoughts. These are feelings and expressions of thought. They're all thoughts. Thoughts are not illness. What you think does not make you ill. When I woke up to that, I realized I was free. I'm free to think anything. There are no thoughts off limit. You act on any thoughts, it's going to come with consequences. But if we can start to see that our life is reality is like a spectrum of experience. Sometimes it's going to feel easy. Sometimes it's not. It's not damaged. You're not broken. Nobody's broken. It's all born of the same thing, thought and water, no matter what. Thought and consciousness, no matter what. Like a rainbow is water and it's water and light. You can start to get a sense of there is nothing wrong with feelings. A rainbow doesn't exist with just pink, yellow, and red. What creates the red creates the blue. It's all the same thing, just showing up different. There's no wrong colours. When you see it, you're seeing clarity. You've seen clearly what reality is. Sylvie's words, clarity. You become aware there's something bigger. These are words people have said about rainbows. People start to see the spectrum of reality that they live in. Reality is a spectrum of consciousness. All possibilities, all born of the same place. It's all thought and consciousness. Consciousness, thought. Which ultimately is one action anyway. Some people find that helpful.
I think also just the fact that all of this is an illusion. It's a refraction of light. Like all feelings are a refraction of consciousness. It doesn't take away from the fact that consciousness is this light. It's pure light. And then drop in a thought and it creates an experience and it seems so real, but no, in the same way as a rainbow, like it's so vivid and you run to get a camera and you come back, it's vanished. It's the same with our moods. And I think I remember when you were talking about this once, I think it was to Brian at the iHeart Centre. I was like, yeah, and like the fact that really this is what we are. We are pure consciousness. But we get to create rainbows. And then at some point we say, you know, this is the good part of the rainbow and this is the bad part, and we divide ourselves up, and we buy into that in the same way we buy into the lake, the waves on the lake. Like, this is just another way of saying, you know, consciousness is the same as saying we are the lake, we're the depth, we're not the waves. We are consciousness, we are not the rainbow. But we get so fixated on it. You can see we get mesmerized by rainbows, we get mesmerized by the sea, and it's the same with our character. But that, I think on the diagram with the lake, they put I am as one of the descriptions of what we actually are, that wholeness with the ability to create. But this is mesmerizing to us. But it doesn't mean that it's more true. And I think that's why when we just get moments where we can drop down and experience that stillness, it doesn't seem to have a color or a quality to it in the same way that any of that stuff does. Because most of that stuff, I'd say all of that stuff is dualistic. All of that stuff is based on having or not having or some kind of experience. Whereas what we are isn't dependent on anything. It just is. And I think that's why I have loved these two diagrams. Like, they're just things that have occurred to you. I think normally when we've either been doing an intensive or on a retreat, and then we can get caught up on the diagrams, but we're like, no, it's just a metaphor to try and point to something that you can't really put into words. But we are that pure light. And there's nothing that you could do to a rainbow. You can't damage it. You know, you think you're going to get to the end of it. And I love the fact that there's been times when we were in South Africa and we're on the top of Lion's Head, and we got to see
the rock inspector. Yeah,
so you actually see the full rainbow. And it's like you've got Nikki, you've got a rainbow on your face right now.
Yeah. Where have you got that from? That's posh.
But I never knew that the rainbow wasn't. And it's like created to do with our eyes and the way that we see, and that's why it's the shape. And you see that it's all an illusion of light and water, in the same way our experience is a creation or illusion of consciousness and thought. And like we could equally have the word mind here, like they are interchangeable, they're words to describe. And I think Bill said beautifully yesterday, remember, these are metaphors. The principles are a metaphor. And Sid said that they came to him, not from him, because he saw that they were helpful, but not to get hung up on the words.
Nikki, grab a set of colouring crayons and colour that in on your face. It suits you. Just have it tattooed. I like that.
That was so cool, though, to be talking about rainbows and then look up. You've just joined and then you have a rainbow
It's like
on your
you're the
face.
chosen one. Does that make sense? I was looking out the window this morning, and we've got, my family loves birds. My mum was there. She's on the screen now. She's got a camera off her. And we love wildlife to my family, and we always feed the birds. We had 4 bullfinches out there today, greenfinch, and loads of chaffinches and robins and blue tits and great tits, shortmackie. Look at that, what a child. And then we've got these rooks, and this rook was feeding on the bird feeder, and it was like, what's that on its back? And so my dad went and got the binoculars. We had a look, and it was covered in frost, because it was a frosty morning in the Lake District this morning. It's covered in frost on its back. So this patch of frozen water. But the bird was still alive, functioning perfectly well with this. You know, it had been flying around, it had been generating heat, but even though it was generating heat, its thermal properties of its down underneath its feathers were so powerful, so useful, so perfect, that it was like when we insulated our van. When we insulated our van, we put all the insulation in the ceiling, but we left a bit for a skylight. And when I looked at it from above as I walked up the drive, and the light was shining down on top, I could see that all the roof was frozen, apart from this one bit where we'd left the insulation for the skylight. That bit was the only bit that wasn't frozen. And it was like you could see the insulating property of the insulation to prevent the melt of the frost. And I think it was just one of those moments where it was just like, everything is totally geared to live. Everything is totally geared to thrive. Anything ever needs, it has access to. Everything is built with such precision, such care. We collect these little things. We're going to stuff a duvet with them. I was just thinking about that whole thing I was saying to the young lad. The mystery of this life. And the I don't know of everything. When you really boil things down to, when you really question yourself. First thing I've picked up, holly. You start to wake up to the mystery of holly leaves. You start to wake up to the mystery of down. It's like, yeah, it's down, it's a feather. I can talk all about it. It's a feather, it's a down. Where's it come from? It's come from a bird. Well, what's a bird? Well, a bird's a type of animal. It's a warm-blooded animal, and it flies. Most of them fly. Some of them don't, but it's got a beak, you know, and okay, but what is a bird? Well, it's something that apparently has evolved from a dinosaur. Okay, well, what's a dinosaur? Well, it's a type of reptile. And what's a reptile? What's a type of animal? What are animals? Well, they're living things. What's a living thing? Well, it's a thing that kind of moves on this earth or in other planets. What does that mean? How does that happen? How does that come about? Consciousness. They're conscious. What's that? It's energy. What's energy? I don't know. You can take anything. You could take that. Like, what's that? It's a leaf off a holly tree. What's a holly tree? Well, it's a spiky tree. What's a tree? Well, it's a living thing. It's a plant. What's a plant? It's a living thing. What's a living thing? Well, it's a thing that's conscious. What's consciousness? Oh, it's energy. What's energy? I don't know. You see, when you reverse engineer knowledge, you always get back to I don't know. That's the most beautiful thing about life. We spend all our time in all the things we think we know, not going back to the mystery, forgetting that everything is foundationally a mystery. We are a mystery, and it's beautiful. That's the space where you enter, where Jesus said, become like the child. To enter the kingdom of heaven, you must become like a child. Remember, the kingdom of heaven, he said, is within you. You are the kingdom of heaven. The creator exists within you. You are the creator. You are the creator of the world. You are the creator of this universe that you see. Each of us is a unique universe. We create our individual realities. We create the world we see. We play in this game of reality. Which is why all the spiritual teachers would say to people, who are you? And those who thought hard enough and saw deep enough would just burst out laughing and go, I don't know. I don't know who I am. I've identified myself as all these things. I've identified myself as all these waves. Now I've discovered I'm this ocean and I do not have a clue what that even means. But I know it's beautiful and I know it's perfect. And the only thing that took me away from the idea of perfection was because I thought I knew who I was. I'm an anxious person. I'm a suicidal person. I'm an addict. I'm somebody with low self-esteem. I'm somebody who spends an awful lot of time in the past, who has limitations. A depressive or happy person, whatever. All these limitations we place upon infinity. And these are all thoughts, nothing more. And like Claire, as we're walking, getting quiet, they start to reveal themselves. And you start to unravel yourself. You start to reverse engineer your closer towards your own divine I don't know. But everything is perfect. If we think it isn't, that's a perspective of thought. That's a wave. Here we go. I've asked. No, please don't press the button. Is it 2 o'clock? 10 minutes, lovely. Just bear with me. I need to make those bloody signs bigger. I asked if you come at 2 o'clock. Is that all right? 10 minutes. Is that all right?
Sorry.
I did have to.
Rusty's defending us.
That's right. Thanks, sweetheart. I'm so sorry.
Good boy, Rust. You tell him.
Should have told him a bit earlier.
Looking for that Chinese proverb.
Proverb.
So I've heard this been told before, and I actually liked how it was told. The written version of it doesn't say it quite as well, but it's the one I've found now.
Do it how you say it, because I prefer how you say
Well,
it.
it's from it's a Chinese proverb, and it's about a man called Sei Wang who lived on the border and raised horses for a living. And the way that I was told this story was that his prized horse ran off, and a neighbour came round and said, "Oh, that's such bad luck." And he said, "Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We'll see." And then the next day, the horse comes back and it brings 5 other horses with it. And his neighbour comes round to congratulate him on his good luck. He says, you know, you're so lucky. This is such good luck. And he said, well, maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. We'll see. And then a little while later, his son is breaking in one of these horses and he falls off and breaks his leg. And the neighbor again comes around and said, oh, this is terrible luck. And he says, well, maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. We'll see. And then a little while later, they come round drafting for the army. And his son can't go to war because he has broken arm.
Broken leg.
Broken leg. I can't remember which way around it was. And his neighbor comes around again and says, oh, this is such good luck. And Sai Weng says, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, we'll see. And you can see how that can just go on forever. And within our own lives, I'm sure we've had things that have seemed like the worst thing ever. And then something that we've learned, or something that comes from it, or something that seemed like the best luck ever, and then it hasn't quite worked out. But you can see in the moment, as soon as we have a judgment and we think that we know something, but I loved how it is, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, we'll see. And that's forever.
I love that parable.
I'd love to know who it was. I think it was maybe Alan Watts who tells it. So I'll try and find it, because when I found it online, it's always a lot longer and doesn't sound as good. But the way that Alan Watts told it, I think it was brilliant.
Because it's a beautiful thing. It's like, how many times in our life have we thought, life's over, that's it, this is terrible. Like myself going to prison, it was like going to prison. I never thought I'd end up in prison. I didn't think I'd fail my college course. It's like all these terrible things that happen to you in life. And now I look back and I'm like, I'm really quite not bothered that I failed my college course. Doesn't really matter now. Didn't matter at all, really. I got to do a job that I really enjoyed doing. And the fact that I went to prison was really useful, because I've been to prisons and talked to prisoners, and I've got to share with them from a space of knowing what it's like to be in prison. And it's like that whole thing of, oh, this is terrible, this is the worst thing, Dave, you've gone to prison. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, we'll see. It was actually one of the best things that happened to me. It allowed me to sit back and reevaluate my life. And, you know, it's, we split up with somebody, we think it's the world's worst thing, terrible thing. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, we'll see. But life does have this funny thing of continuing and teaching and growing and learning, and it's beautiful. It seems like the less we identify with our experiences as being who we are, the quicker we learn our lessons, and the less lessons seem to come to us. The more we identify with the space that we truly are, the light, the power of thought, it's just words, pure consciousness, God, the dreamer, the true self, I am, as in before any label we add after I am hungry, I am happy, I am sad, none of that, take away the last bit. I am pure love that we are, the non-dualistic, singular, spirit, mind, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter, because it's just words. Ocean. Nick, you should have drawn that on whilst you had the chance. It's gone now. Right, there is a rep waiting outside.
So we're back at 2:00 with Linda.
Are we back at 2:00? You sure?
No, we're not. We're back at 4:00.
Mm-hmm. 2 hours.
With Linda Pettit. So we'll probably be back on about sort of 10 to, just to get ready so we can start at 4.
And then
so it's 4 UK as well.
And then after Linda, we've got Elsie Spittle. Yay. Coolio. Mwah! Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely couple of hours. Loads of love.